Right, so tonight what we're looking at is card play stuff. Specifically, we're looking at defenders. Now, finessing, you'll hear me say this all the time, probably too much, is finesse this queen of diamonds, lead to the ace of diamonds, then finesse clubs. I use the word finesse all the time. It typically refers to when you are declarer and not defender. So, as a defender, you can finesse dummy, or you could finesse declarer, but it's quite difficult for you to know how to do that because you can't see your partner's cards. So whenever we're talking about finesses, we're normally talking about declarer's play. Okay? So, first things first, just as a little recap of what finesses are and how to do them. So, a finesse is a way of trying to make a trick out of a card that is not necessarily a winner. Now, a common mistake when you first get into the game of bridge is you snatch at your tricks. For people who've played whist, this is a bad habit you get from whist, especially knockout whist, because knockout whist you need to get your tricks whilst you can. Whereas playing bridge, every single card is dealt, so it's a different scenario. So what happens when you first start playing is you go, oh well, I'll play low to that ace, that's a winner. I'll play low to that king, that's a winner. Oh good, I've won 2 tricks. That isn't good card play, I'm afraid to say. Winning aces and kings is not difficult. Unless they're trumping them, then it probably is difficult. What is difficult is making tricks out of cards that are not necessarily the bosses in the suit. So what a finesse looks to do is it tries to make tricks out of cards that are not necessarily the boss in the suit. So it's trying to win a trick out of a potential loser. Okay? So in this instance, we have, first we'll look at the spade suit. I'll go down them. In the spade suit, we have a potential problem. The king, that's the problem. Now, where the king is relevant. So the thing about finesses is the position of a certain card is relevant, and where you lead from is very relevant. So if we lead spades, if we lead the ace of spades, that will win almost all the time. I'm imagining we've either drawn trumps, or this is the trump suit, or we're in no trumps. Trumps aren't an element anyway. So if we lead the ace of spades, that will win. But then whoever has the king won't play their king, and so then their king will win. Okay? Again, not good card play to win the ace. Every single person, assuming they can play the ace, will win the ace. Okay? The trick is trying to make the queen. Now, making the queen is, as I said, it's a positional thing. If you lead from this hand, whatever you lead, if you lead the ace, I'm imagining, of course, that whoever has the king has more than one. Because if they only have the king, which would be very fortuitous, your ace will drop their king and then your queen will be a winner. Basically doesn't happen. So when you play your ace, if you lead the spades from this hand, you play your ace, they play a baby one. If you play the queen, they play their king on it. Because you're leading from the wrong place. So position is a very important thing when finessing. If you lead from south, it's a different game. That's because you are leading towards your threat. You'll have heard me say that before. Lead towards your goodies. Never, if you can afford it, away from your goodies. You always want to play your goodies in third rather than first, if you can afford to. So in this instance, if we somehow got the lead to south, maybe using a side suit, sometimes you have to get the lead over there in a different way. You lead a spade from south. West, if we can see through the backs of the cards, West cannot win. Because if they play the king, you play the ace, and now your queen's a winner. If they play low, you play the queen, and that's a winner. Now in real life, they will play low, and you will have a sweaty moment where you're going, is the queen going to win, or isn't it? Again, going back to basic principles, you will always save it being trumped. Always make your ace. So playing the ace is a 0% chance of increasing your tricks. So it's almost as bad as not doing anything. Well, it is as bad as not doing anything, because you will always win that ace. So it's something I try and dissuade you out of all the time. Don't just snatch your tricks, because that ace will always win. So what you should do is play the queen, which has a 50% chance of increasing your tricks. The ace has a 0% chance of increasing. I suppose not 0, because the king could be singleton there, so I suppose it's 0.0001 or something. So if this queen wins, great, you've achieved an extra trick, in theory, for free. If this queen doesn't win, then you've not lost anything. That's the principle. Okay? Again, of course, it could be that the queen loses to the king, you play your ace and someone trumps it. So I'm assuming, of course, you've either drawn the trumps or you're in no trumps, or something where the trumps isn't a particular worry. It's still the right thing to do, even if there is a chance of it being trumped, because the chance of it being trumped is a lot less than 50%, so it's still correct to go for the extra trick. So that's what's known as a simple finesse, or a natural finesse, standard finesse, normal finesse, a finesse. You lead from the poor suit towards the goodies, and you have a jaw around a particular card, ace, queen, king, jack, queen, 10, something that traps a particular card that you're interested in. Now, something I'll be looking at more, because these are slightly more difficult to do, are these two finesses. These are, in a sense, identical to the standard finesse, but they're ever so slightly different. The principle is the same, but the way you play them is marginally different. So in this instance, our honours in hearts now, our honours are split. We have queen, jack in one hand and the ace in the other. So you could then say to me, well, which one should I lead towards? Because they've both got good cards in them. Should I lead towards the ace, because that's the best card, or should I lead towards the queen, jack, because that's got more of them? So in theory, that's confusing. Whenever you're leading, trying to make a finesse, you should lead towards the best card you have in the suit, or the threat, the best threat you have. The card you're interested in is the king. The ace is the threat to that king. The queen, jack is not a threat to the king. If you lead low, away from your ace, whoever has the king of hearts can play their king and they will win it, because you can't beat it. So the ace is the threat to the card that you have missing. So you have to lead towards your threat. Now the reason this is called a sandwich finesse is because you try to sandwich the card that you're missing in between two cards. You lead an honour card out and you have another honour card in the other hand. And you're hoping that you're trapping it in between the two honours. So when you lead the queen or the jack, they're both equivalent, when you lead the queen out, again, if West doesn't have the king, it doesn't matter, but if West does have the king, they've now got the same problem as they had previously. In spades, they couldn't play their king because you'd ace it. In hearts, they can't play their king because you'll ace it. The only difference is that you're leading an honour out rather than having the honour over here. Very similar principles, but slightly different. Notice that I've got the jack when I've done this sandwich finesse. If you don't have the jack, what could West do to stop you from making the queen? If you led the queen out from South's hand, what could West do to stop you from making this? Well, to put the question a different way, if West plays low, you're going to run the queen, aren't you? The whole idea of you playing the queen from your hand was an attempt to make it. You're not going to play the ace on your own queen. So therefore you're going to do that. And your queen will win, because West has the king. However, if West plays the king on your queen, you're going to have to play your ace. How many tricks have you just made out of that suit? One. How many were you expected to make with the ace?
One. Two.
One or two, depending on what happened with the queen. But you notice, by leading the queen, West has broken your plan by playing the king on your queen. This goes against the rule of second hand plays low. That's because you know, as West, you know what South is doing. With almost 100% certainty, you know they're not going to play the ace on this queen. If your partner has the ace, your king will win. If they have the ace, you have to kill that queen with your king, otherwise their queen's going to win.
Does it matter where the dummy is?
Not particularly, because the theory is still the same, but it helps if dummy shows a card that you need to know about. But if you think from a logic, if both of these hands weren't showing, which would be unusual obviously because it can't happen, but if they led the queen, the king is still the correct card, because wherever the ace is, either the king will win if the ace is over here, or the king will force the ace out, in which case they don't win their queen. So it helps when you can see it in dummy, but actually it doesn't matter. The principle's still the same. So the way for a sandwich finesse to work, because you're leading an honour out, you have to have the honour below it. Otherwise, you're not promoting anything. When you lead the queen, they play their king on it. If you've got nothing left, you've actually achieved nothing with your queen, because you played your ace on your queen, because they made you. So for a sandwich finesse to work, you actually need a backup. If you like, this is cheesy, stuffing to your sandwich. So you need something that backs up the honour that you're leading out. If ever you're about to lead an honour out as some kind of finesse, you need to ask yourself, do I have the honour below this honour? So if you're leading the queen, do you have the jack? If you're leading the jack, do you have the 10? If you don't have those cards, you're about to not achieve something unless the defenders misplay. And the previous example, by leading the queen out, what you're hoping for essentially is a misplay from the defence. You're hoping they don't play their king on your queen. But if we're talking pure statistics, this is a 0% chance of doing anything good. Pure statistics. Obviously, there's psychological edges where you can.
So as West, you should always play the king, whether you know whether they've got the jack or not.
Yes, because you don't know whether they've got the jack or not. If this is hidden, if you can see it on the dummy and you can see the jack, you know you're doomed, whatever. But you should play the king on the queen because it is the only chance you have of promoting any tricks. Now, that is something known as covering an honour with an honour, which goes against the second-hand plays low thing. The reason second-hand low is kind of a rule is because normally you play a low card towards a good card. It's unusual you lead a high card out. So there's kind of two different things going on there. Covering an honour with an honour is something we'll do as a defensive technique down the line. Okay? So the important thing about sandwich finessing, the principle is the same. You are trying to trap a card underneath their card. The difference is you're leading an honour out. So when you lead an honour out, you have to have extra goodies because they can now kill something with their trapped card. Whereas in the spade scenario, when you lead a low one, their king is going to be on fresh air if they play it. So you only need the ace-queen to trap them in spades, whereas you need the ace-queen-jack to do a sandwich finesse. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. It's a marginal difference, but it's actually quite an important one. Because if you lead an honour out and you don't have the honour below it, good defenders will stop you from achieving anything. And in fact, you've actually wasted a card now. Okay? Now, the third one is much less frequent, the naked finesse. I'm not sure if I actually came up with that name or not, because I think I did, because I don't think people tend to recognise it. It's essentially a finesse where you don't have control of the suit. So a finesse where you're hoping to make a trick at best. In these two scenarios, we're hoping to improve our number of tricks. We've got X amount of tricks, we're hoping for Y. In this instance, 1 and 2. In the diamond scenario, we're just hoping to make a trick. So we hope that the king becomes a trick. So what layout of the cards would make it that our king would become a trick? Well, where would the ace need to be, basically?
West.
West. If the ace of diamonds with some of them is with West, how do you need to play those diamonds to try and make your king? Where do you need the lead to be?
South.
Do everyone agree?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. About 3 of us, that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
Lead a low diamond from south, and you're in a very similar scenario to the finesse position. If West plays their ace of diamonds, you play low. If they play low, you play your king and cross your fingers. Now this is far more uncomfortable, because you first of all don't have control of the suit. Second of all, you might not make any tricks at all. But what you're trying to do really is have a last-ditch attempt at an extra trick. Sometimes you've got to do it. Sometimes it's the only way you can play this particular hand, because you need one more trick. That's the only chance you've got. If that's it, that's it. You try to, if you can, take finesses in suits where you have better holdings than this. But sometimes this is the only thing you have left. You know, you tried a finesse there, it didn't work. You drew the trumps, they broke badly. I need an extra trick. This is the only chance I've got. As ever with a finesse, you lead a low card towards your good card. Can't stress how important that is. The lead being in the correct position is the whole way it functions. If you lead from the incorrect hand, you will be doing nothing. If you lead any of these suit combinations from north, you will never be able to make the maximum number of tricks. If you lead a spade, they will play their king at the appropriate time. If you lead a heart, they'll do the same. If you lead a diamond, they'll wait till you play your king to play their ace. So they've got the advantage on you. See the difference? Yeah? Okay. Now, that's all well and good, knowing how to finesse. Knowing when to finesse is quite an important thing, because sometimes you don't need to. For example, to give you a silly example, I'm not worried about the entire hand. So we've got 10 spades headed by ace, king, queen. Now, there are always 2 options. Whenever you're missing cards in a particular suit, you tend not to have ace, king, queen, jack, 10, so you don't care. And if you do have that suit, no one's going to play it wrong. When you have missing cards, which is far more often, there are always 2 different paths you can take. You can either finesse for your missing card, like we just looked at, or you can play for the drop. Now, playing for the drop is where you just play all of your big cards out and hope that they've played the card you're missing by that stage. So if you look at this spade suit, there are two options. You could play from bad towards good. You could play a low spade to the 10 in the hope that the jack's here, doing a finesse. Or you could play the ace, then the king, then the queen, and hope that by that stage someone has played the jack. Do you see the difference? There's two kind of lines. One is, well, I'll just bash them down and let's see what happens. And the other one is more of a technical play, if you like. Now, how many spades are we missing as a team?
3.
3. So let's try and distribute it where the drop doesn't work. The answer is you can't. If we give one opponent all 3 spades, they are still forced into playing the jack after 3 rounds. So you could take a finesse, which is a 50% chance, or you could play the ace, king, queen, which is a 100% chance. So you play for the drop. Do you see? So there isn't necessarily, if there is a finesse available, it doesn't mean you should just finesse, 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 finesse. You tend to find finesses are quite frequently the best odds because it's quite hard to get to 50%. But with a huge amount of cards like this, the drop becomes a lot better. Because when you play 3 rounds, they have so few cards, it's hard for them to hold on to what they need to hold on to. You with me? So there is a point, as you get fewer and fewer and fewer cards, there is a point where the drop becomes worse than the finesse. So you need a way of working that out. Now, there is one method. You could just memorize suit patterns, of which there are millions, or you could use a little cheat. So the cheat is as follows. So, as you saw, the drop was very good when they had very few cards. So the more cards you have, the better the drop is. If you only have 2 cards, they've got 11 between them. The likelihood of them having to play an honor is very slim / 0. So in this instance, we have 8 cards. So the way to start your cheat off is count your number of cards, first of all. So in this case, we have 8. So they have 5. So once you know how many cards they have, you, in your head, paint a little picture and divide them as evenly as possible. So in this instance, you've not played a card yet, you're just kind of having a little imaginary moment. You divide them 3 and 2. That is the most evenly you can divide this spade suit. Okay? So let's say 3 and 2. It doesn't matter, you don't have to decide which opponent has 3, you just have to know they're most likely to be 3 and 2. Then you put the card that you are missing with the longest holding. So in this instance, the card we're missing is the queen, and the longest holding is the 3. Again, it doesn't matter whether you put the queen there or there, you're just putting it with the 3. What that tells us is that the queen is, this is the most likely layout of the suit. The queen is with 3. If you think about it this way, if I had 5 cards, one of which is important, if I dealt you 3 and you 2, who's more likely to have it? The person who got the 3. That's the way the odds work. Now, of course, it's not guaranteed, but it's most likely. So in this instance, once you've painted this little picture, I'm missing 4, I'm missing 5, that's 3 and 2, the queen's with the 3. Will the ace-king drop the queen? So if you played ace-king, would they play their queen? No. What that tells you, that cheat tells you that the drop is not the best odds. Therefore, you should finesse. So if you do that cheat, if the drop works in your imaginary picture, that means the drop is the best odds. If the drop doesn't work, that means finesse is the best odds. And I tried this out over loads and loads of different suit combinations, and it isn't wrong. I don't know why, it's just like a magic cheat. So if I give us an extra card, we now have 4 cards missing. So they're divided 2-2. Again, this is not a promise. I cannot promise to you that suits will always break evenly, though I hope they do for you. It's just a way of working out what the best odds are.
And it doesn't matter in this cheat which way around you put the odds, does it? Because it'll work the same either way.
Exactly. So in this instance, you put the queen with the longest holding, which is wherever you like. So let's say here, because they haven't had much today. Will the ace-king drop the queen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because they have queen and a little one. So therefore, the drop is the best odds. So in that instance, we went from 8 cards to 9 cards. The finesse was best at 8. The drop was best at 9. There is a very famous, not very famous, a well-known saying in bridge, which is known as 8 ever, 9 never. You might have heard someone say that before. 8 ever means 8 ever finesse. 9 never means 9 never finesse. The reason that is a very dangerous saying is because it refers to when you have the ace, king, jack, and they have the queen. It only refers to that this suit combination. And I've heard a lot of people use it, missing the king, missing the jack, and it's completely incorrect. So you've just got to be careful with that saying. But you might have
Why
heard
does it make
people
any
say
difference missing the king?
because if you're missing the king, the drop is much
I see,
less
yes,
likely
can't
to
drop
work
it, yeah,
because you can't play ace king now, you play ace. So well, we might as well do it with the king. We've now got 9 cards, but we're now missing the king. When their card improves, the drop becomes a lot worse because you can't play as many winners. Because before we could play ace and king, so you can pull 2 rounds off them. Now we can play the ace, so that pulls 1 round off them. So for the ace to be the correct card, they need to have been dealt the king only for that to work. So in this instance, the suit's divided 2-2. I mean, let's give us an extra one. The suit's divided 2-1. The king is with the 2, most likely. Will the ace drop the king?
No.
No, so you should finesse. So you require a massive 11 card fit for the king to drop. Essentially, don't try and drop the king.
And even
But
then, it's
actually-
only 50-50, isn't it?
Yes,
Am I right in saying you can't finesse it if it's at east anyway?
if it's with east, you can't finesse it, but
No.
finesse is the correct odds, yeah. I'm imagining, I don't know where the king is, just for the odds, yeah.
So back to that example, the odds for the finesse are exactly the same as the odds for the drop.
Not actually, no.
No?
If you're interested, when you play a low card and they produce a low card, they now have 12 cards where the king could be, they have 13 cards, so it's a 52% chance for the drop to work. That is not watertight.
So, no.
Because the king is not that small card, right? So they have 12 remaining cards in their hand, one of which could be the king. So they're a 12 to 13 underdog for holding the king. So if you times that by 4, you get 48 to 52. So 52% chance of the drop working, whereas the finesse is 50. Now, I'm not expecting you to memorise all these percentages. You don't even need to be able to work them out. If you know how to do the cheat, it does it all for you. So it's a marvellous teaching tool because all you have to do is go, I'm missing 4, they're divided 2-2, the queen will drop ace king. It either works or it doesn't, but if you play the best odds on every single hand, you can't go wrong. Well, you can go wrong, but you can't lose in the long run. Okay? Now, let's try a few more, because this is actually quite a fun practice to do. Okay, so the card we're missing is the queen. So how many spades are we missing?
6.
6, so they're divided 3-3. So put the queen where you like. What's the best odds? Finesse. You have an interesting proposition here, is should you play low to the jack, hoping that they've got the queen, or should you play low to the 10, hoping that they've got the queen? Who knows? Just decide based on whoever you dislike the most. This is what's known as a two-way finesse. You could finesse this way, or you could finesse this way. Whoever's bid is more likely to have it if anyone's bid. If not, you've just got to choose. But the finesse is definitely better than playing ace-king. If you play the ace-king, that's got a sort of a 30-odd% chance of success, whereas a finesse has a 50% chance. Again, you don't need to know the numbers, just need to know the cheat. Okay? Right, let's try that one. Okay? So, we've got 9, so they're breaking
2 and 2.
through 2. The king is somewhere. Try not to get in the habit of putting it there or there, just imagine it's wherever the longest is. So in this instance it doesn't matter. So what's your best odds? Finesse. How are you playing this suit? How are you finessing?
Either way.
Where do you want the lead from? If you lead low from south, or the ace from south, they'll make their king, won't they?
Yes.
If you lead low, they'll play their king when they can. If you play the ace, they won't play their king. So you need to lead from north. Which card?
Queen.
And queen.
Why can't you play 10?
You could play low to the 10. Now, one thing I forgot to mention on sandwich finesses is when the finesse works, let's imagine this is the layout of the suit. Because that's nice for us. When you lead the queen, the good thing about sandwich finesses is if they work, you're in the correct place to do the finesse again. Whereas natural finesses, you lead a low card to that one, you go, ooh, that one. Then the lead's in the wrong place if you want to do it again, which is a bit irritating.
So the natural you lead low, the sandwich you lead before you're
Exactly.
established on.
So it could be that the big one wins
Yeah.
if they don't play their honour. They should defensively play their honour because you could be trying it on with that suit. That suit you can't lead the queen because you haven't got the jack. So if you lead the queen, it goes queen, king, ace, and you lose the jack. In this instance, there is no way to take all the tricks. You have to lose a trick.
So would you still do that? Even though
I would, because there is 0% chance of taking all the tricks, I'd lead the queen and hope that they do a misdefense, yeah, but there is no mathematical way of getting all the tricks down. But I would lead the queen in the hope that they forget to put their king line. Alright, now, analysing which suit to finesse in is all well and good, and once you've decided, you know, I'm drawing trumps, or I'm playing this suit in no trumps, you should still do this as a matter of principle, even if you know instinctively, oh, I should play for the drop because I'm missing the jack, I've got 17 of them, it's fine. You should do it just to force yourself into doing that habit, so you're always playing the correct odds. So if we take, this suit always kind of intrigued me as to how unusual it is. So we are now missing the jack. It is unusual to finesse for the jack because you can play the ace, the king, and the queen. So you can play a lot before they have to have held on to their jack. So how do you think this suit is breaking based on our little cheap formula?
3 and 3.
3, 3. So the jack's wherever. So will it drop?
Mm.
Yes,
Yeah.
because you can play ace, king, and queen.
Yeah, get them right away.
What now?
No.
Now what's the break?
7, 4, 3.
4, 3. Now I hope this suit isn't trumps because that means we're in a big misfit. The jack is with the 4. Will it drop?
No.
No. So how are you playing this suit?
Finesse.
Finesse. So where do you want the lead?
South.
South. And I bet none of you would have done this before tonight. The correct odds is low to the 10.